New system detected in the Milky Way. The group of 5 must have been hiding it. Unknown system. Impossible, that entire galaxy has been charted. No, it can't be. Earth? After all of these millenniums? God has finally returned to us.
So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We are now on episode 95 of the series, and in the previous episode we saw a ton of important events happen, such as the creation of the Planetary Defensive Treaty Organization. As you can see, a majority of the countries in the world are in this new international alliance meant to deter any extraterrestrial threat from invading the Earth. But aside from that, we saw alliance expansion, Unitarian expansion, we saw a war over in Europe and a war over in Central Asia, as well as a major war between Australia and a bunch of other Southeast Asian countries. So if you guys do enjoy today's Wixo video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. As always, all the support is greatly appreciated. Make sure to check out the limited edition 200,000 subscribers celebration merchandise, now available at a discounted rate at AdizzMerch.com. Also, there's Wixo merch as well. I'm actually wearing it, and this is the only time you'll ever see me wearing this, but that's beside the point. Check out channel memberships, check out all the other cool stuff in the description. Let's go ahead and jump straight into this video. So the Planetary Defensive Treaty Organization is a very important alliance, and we'll get to more of it later. But for now, these are all the countries that are within that alliance, but there are a ton more that are lining up to join. For now, though, we're coming over here to Central Asia to talk about two countries which we don't often talk about. The Dark Scion team and the Till team are going to war, and as I've mentioned before, the Assembly of Nations has stopped multiple wars from breaking out in this region. However, they can't stop every single attempt at war, and now we see that the Till team is invading the Dark Scion team for two main reasons. One of them includes resources that this country has that the Till team does not have. They would find it very vital to their economy, and it's going to help boost a lot of the technology within their country. But aside from that, politically, these two countries are not very friendly at all. They have a very long history together, but modernly it has finally dwindled down into a full-scale war, and now we see that the Till team is absolutely dominating this country. Their capital city is long gone before they go ahead and meet up with the border of the Gold team, and by that point we have the surrender of the Dark Scion team. So that war was pretty quick, but we can go ahead and take a look at the peace treaty, in which that country is fully annexed, and this country gets a slight hue shift. So this country now has access to all the resources they wanted to boost their economy, and on top of that, it also technically improves their relations with the Gold team, who also did not like the Dark Scion team. These two countries don't like each other, but now that the Dark Scion team is gone, there is a chance for them to improve their relations. But for now, we're jumping right on over to Mesopotamia, where we have one very interesting event happening, and that very interesting event is the unification between the blue team and the pink team. Now, you might remember that these two countries had some sour relations over a war that they fought against each other a few decades ago. I'm not sure exactly how long ago it was at this point. There used to be a very specific time frame for the series around World War III, World War IV. But since then, I've made an emphasis on saying that the time frame is up to you guys mostly now. But at that point, that war was probably a few decades ago, so we're assuming that there's been time for improvement, and that's exactly what has happened. These two countries have become very close together despite that war. You know, at the end of the day, they're still both Mesopotamian countries. They're the same people, just divided by borders. There's literally no differences between the two. They govern the same way, and they have the same ethnicity, same religion, all that stuff. It's just a matter of there being a border between them, and one of them being a sovereign nation and the other one being a sovereign nation. That's not the case anymore, obviously, because they united. And now, as you guys have probably started to notice, Mesopotamia is only split between three countries: the red team, the blue team, and the green team. So power is very, very quickly being restored in Mesopotamia, more specifically between the red team and the blue team, the two strongest countries in this region. And really, they're unmatched until you get over to like India. These guys are extraordinarily strong, but we're more focused over here right now. But yeah, a united Mesopotamia for the most part. Really, like, the border between the red team and the blue team is very exaggerated. You know, it's there. Obviously, they're both sovereign nations, but they function so closely together and they're so interlinked that it kind of isn't there. I've said this before and I've been over it, but the economies, the militaries of this region, they're all interlinked. They're all connected in a way. So really, the only thing that's keeping these two separate is the fact that there is a border there, and that border is recognized by all the other countries in the world. It kind of has to be. But aside from the unification in Mesopotamia, we're now going to zoom back out to the world map, and we're going to take a look at those new countries that have lined up to join the PDTO. And there's a lot of them. You see, in the Wixo world, there has been a lot of countries that have been working together to monitor space ever since the assembly meeting that took place a few months ago. And in that time, they have just been exploring the opened up universe. Because remember, the solar system that Wixo is in, which is our solar system, just very far away from now in the future, was closed off from the rest of not only the galaxy, but the whole universe. So they just thought that it was only the solar system and nothing else. But after a certain event occurred, we had the barrier between this world and the rest of the universe being broken, and they were exposed to everything else in the world. So like in real life right now, of course, we can see the galaxy, we can see everything, but in Wixo, they couldn't do that. They could only see their solar system. So they've just been looking. They've been seeing all that they've missed over the, centuries that people have been here, millenniums that people have been here, and they're just discovering the world that we already know, but they are unfamiliar with. At the same time, though, they have been searching for any signs of a threat that could threaten Earth. Remember, in the Singularity Testament, it spoke of an alien force that would come for the Earth, possibly, and try to reclaim it. There's been no evidence of that happening just yet, but just like the circumstances that have led up to this very moment kind of say that maybe there is a chance of that happening. An ancient prophecy found in the bottom of the ocean that scientists have been able to trace back to thousands upon thousands and thousands of years ago, but it hasn't dissolved, it hasn't oxidized in the water, it's still there, which suggests that there's some future technology at play here. On top of that, there's all the evidence that they found on the moon, they found it on Mars, but now that they've been exposed to the whole entire universe, they're starting to find more and more evidence of humanity, like space junk, for example, parts of rockets that have floated, but not floated too far away. And in turn, this has motivated more countries to be a part of this global cause just in case. So with that being said, let's take a peek at all the countries that are going to be joining the PDTO. So starting off, we have the gold team, Korea, the Philippines, Tanzania, the gold team, the purple team, and Sudan, the green team in Mesopotamia. The recently formed Libyan government decides to join as well, as does the Sicilian country and Switzerland. Notably, we see the Roman Republic join. And over in the Americas, we have two new members, being the green team in Ecuador, and then we have the teal team down here in this area of Brazil. So those are all the new countries that join the PDTO, and as you can see now, a majority of the countries in the world are in this organization, and there's only a select few that are not in this organization. And usually that's only because either one, they don't believe in the teachings of the Singularity Testament, or that they are having some delay in their government system. Maybe their Congress is taking a long time to get to this bill, which would make them join this organization. So there's a multitude of factors, and it's different for every single country. But one of those countries that didn't join was the brown team up here in Russia, and that's for a very specific reason. And the brown team up here, which is not a very strong country at all, has a very low population, but they are very resourceful, will be uniting with another country in the region, not Russia, but the seafoam green Siberian country. And that's also why I shifted the hue of this country earlier, because it would have looked very bad. But yes, the brown team will be joining Siberia, and they have now just created the largest country in the world, possibly the largest, maybe not the largest country of all time, because, the Russian Empire was very huge. But one of the largest countries in history has just formed, a very peaceful unification between two countries that are not super strong, but very resourceful. They now come together under one solidified union, kind of under the government of Siberia, but not really, they bring in representatives from the brown team as well. But yeah, the seafoam green country is now at its greatest extent in history. You guys know that I'm a big fan of this country, more so because of its color, not because of anything that it's done. It's done a whole lot of nothing. And realistically, in the modern era, they wouldn't be doing so hot with how all the other countries are developing. They don't have a population, like I said earlier, the Siberian country, they do have a pretty good population, especially down in the Mongolian regions. But for the sake of both of these countries, it would be better for them to unite together. Siberia gets more resources, and the brown team gets more population. So the union is now complete, and we have one of the largest countries, if not the largest country in the world now. Also, if you guys didn't see the Russia Wixo video that I posted last Saturday in place of a normal Wixo video, then first of all, shame on you. Why don't you watch my other videos? What is wrong with you? You just use me for Wixo? Jeez. But also, there wasn't a video because of two things. First of all, I had finals in college, so that was a big deal. I had to get through that before I recorded a video. And with how this episode is going to play out here in a little bit, I didn't have time to put it all together. So, not that I'm spoiling anything toward the end of this episode, but it's going to take me a lot of time. The second thing, though, is having some writing issues with the series, trying to mingle the lore into what is about to happen in the next few episodes, but trying to translate this era into the next era, which is going to be very crazy. It was kind of challenging. Also, just filling in this era and all has been kind of challenging, which, by the way, is called the Silent Era. I don't think I ever officially gave it a name, but I've had that name for a while. I don't think I've ever said it, though. Anyway, I'm going to stop yapping about stuff that is irrelevant to the story now, because you guys are watching this series live, and you're probably disappointed right now. I'm sorry. Anyway though, Big Siberia, me very happy. It's going to take a while to get used to looking at the map, just like how it took a little bit for us to get used to Pacifica, but eventually it'll look fine. Anyway, we're heading straight down to the Orange team now because they're having a civil war. This is a very, very interesting civil war because there's a bunch of different factions at play here. First of all, against all odds, the communist purple country has begun to rebel against the Orange team. Remember how a few episodes ago I was talking about how they all hated each other and it was like very mixed up, very, very hard to separate, and it was just better for the pink team and the orange team to combine them together into their two territories? Yeah, well, it turns out there is something that can unite all those people, and that's being under the rule of the orange team. It sucks. Well, according to these guys, it does. So they were all fighting against each other. They got annexed by the orange team. That sucked. And then they were like, wait, guys, what if we turned our anger from each other to the new government in the orange team? What a great idea that was. It united everybody and now they're fighting back against the orange team. Aside from that, however, we have a rebel group appearing over here in the northwest of the country. These guys are kind of like the Democratic Party. Now this country is technically democratic. It just has a very expansionist leader. And they're like over it. They're over all the wars. They want this country to focus on themselves. And this is the main opposing group of the government. They have one large section up here, as well as a smaller section over here in the far east, right on the border of this country, whichever color this is. But that's not all. There's more. Because the Till team, who is now seeing how the country that previously took land from them is exploding, decides that it's a great time to get back some old land. So the Teal team also joins the war, and all of a sudden this is turning into a very large gangbang of the Orange team. Mighty unfortunate for the government forces, who will first target the far eastern rebellion over here. They will do a lot of damage to them, pushing them back all the way over to this region over here. They'll also do a considerable amount of damage up to the purple team up here, targeting these two major cities, which are where the strength of the rebellion is found, but also targeting these cities over here where there's also a lot of strength in the rebellion, just a different group. Now the Till team here is going to be on some King Von stuff, because they will immediately send their troops over into this northern region and take it all. Totally not because there was no one there. But no, the actual stuff comes into play right down here as they just blitz right into the Orange team and take over these two major cities, encircling almost an entire army group over here. And these rebellions are like, whoa, that's crazy. And the Orange team is like, whoa, that's really crazy. And the purple team's like, whoa, please send help. Have no fear, the green team is here. The microstate, with its very tiny army, decided that this is a good time to try to reform their once great empire. The king of this country, that's right, they are a monarch, remember that, decides that now is the perfect opportunity to retake old land that does belong to them just a very long time ago. But their entrance into the war is actually going to have a very large impact, as they will work to kind of encircle a large portion of the Orange team's army over here. Prime Von comes down then and connects up with this area, this sea right here, where technically it's a part of the Caspian Sea. Does it have a name? I don't know. But they will do a tremendous work in pushing back the Orange team, and their government's just like, what is happening right now? Our entire army group in the West is getting slimed by rebels right now. And on top of that, a microstate has like quadrupled its size in this war. Just some very embarrassing stuff for the Orange team here. But eventually the rebels will be successful in taking out this entire western region over here. But yeah, the Orange team is like, what do we even do at this point? So they decide to take their anger out on this rebel group all the way over here in the east. They are eradicated, and these guys over here are kind of like, dang, that sucks. But hey, they don't even border the Orange team anymore, so there's a pretty good chance that they will get their independence should there be a peace treaty. Also, the purple team now, who may or may not be getting some support from a certain someone just north of here, is, well, they're taking back a lot of land, and the Orange team is very confused at this point because how are we just, losing this war so bad? Taking a look internally, we'll see exactly why that is happening, because their government is extremely unpopular. Truthfully, the current president of this country is getting very close to the end of their term, and in that time, they decided to ramp up the foreign policy of this nation, which has been very consistent of war and aggression. So he's kind of just lost their support, and the citizens are doing nothing to really help the government out in this war. They're kind of just letting this happen. Like, sure, we're being invaded by a foreign nation, and that's never a good thing, and we're going to fight back in our own way, just we're not going to help you, because we hate you, and we know that the democratic government is going to take over here in a second. So, anyway, we have Prime Von taking over the capital of the Orange team. These guys are on a mission right now, as you can tell. And on top of that, the Green team's navy just made a naval landing over here. Surprise, surprise, they have a navy. They'll take a little bit of land, but mostly they're trying to get land out of the peace treaty, and the Teal team is probably going to work with them in some way because they did fight on the same side in this war. But as for the rest of this country, the president is going to flee to the next major city, and very quickly he'll be tracked down by Von, and that will be the end of him. With the government now pretty much gone, the rest of the country will surrender over to the rebel forces as well as the Teal team and the Green team, and we can go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty where the Orange team got dissected very quickly. So phase 1 of this peace treaty has two things happening. First of all, the teal team gets all of their old land back from the orange team, and second of all, we have the releasing of the purple country from the orange team. So that's just like the start of it. That's the foundation of this treaty. And of course, the majority of the purple team is in the pink team at this point, so they're not going to be getting that back for obvious reasons. But now for phase 2, which has all of these countries getting land from the orange team, so the teal team will get a healthy portion of land. The green team will like quintuple in size. They become extraordinarily large compared to how they just were, but still, in the grand scheme of things, a very small nation. And then we have the purple team actually gaining 2 regions out of the orange team, so they were able to expand their territory into areas which they didn't previously claim, but they now get spoils in the peace treaty, therefore they're allowed to expand. The orange team gets a brand new government led by the rebel forces that were over here in the east, as well as up here in the top western areas. And now everyone is semi-happy, except for the purple team. They need a capital city. Alright, but now as you guys can tell, Central Asia has changed a lot in this video, from Siberia all the way down to the teal team over here, and then most recently with the orange team down here. And probably the most surprising thing that has happened so far is that the green team has crawled out of microstate status, and they're now just a normally sized country. So yeah, no longer a city-state, now an actual functioning country. They're well on their way to rebuilding their once glorious empire. Probably not though, let's be real here. Anyway, now we're heading straight down to Africa, where we have a major event occurring with the pink team joining in on Africa Unitaria. This has been in the works for a while, and now it is finally done, so the pink African country will go ahead and join the Unitarians. And this country has become very strong with all the unifications that have occurred recently. As we all know, this region has been very, very united in history. They've very often worked together in time, and even colonially, there was a lot of similarities between these countries. Now, the most recent one, of course, this is going to be a little bit different and maybe a little bit challenging for the Unitarian countries, because remember, a part of this ideology is kind of like not necessarily fully giving up your culture and heritage. I might have said that before, but I think I want to kind of change the wording a little bit. You're not like completely abandoning your identity, but you're reducing it to a point where it doesn't really matter anymore. Like nowadays especially, you'll notice that people really care about like what your religion is. Like if you're a Muslim, then people in the US are probably going to have an unfavorable view of you because it's a very divided world, and a lot of people are lying and being hateful in the US right now. And I want you guys to think of Unitarianism as the opposite of that, whereas those things don't matter to the normal people, and really in real life they don't really matter to the normal people, but especially so in this world where like no one cares. Like it's not a big deal what you are, where you come from. We're all together now, working together as a society. Those things just hold us up. People who are too concerned about those things are pretty much expelled from societies like these. Like, you guys are crazy. Get out of here. We don't care about that stuff. We don't care about your culture. We don't care about what language you spoke or what religion you are. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we're all equal and we're all moving forward together as a society. I feel like that I probably definitely worded that wrong in previous videos where people thought that Unitarianism was this thing where you have to completely abandon who you are. It's not that. It's more so of you just reducing it so much where it doesn't matter anymore. You can still practice your religion, still practice your culture. It's just, it doesn't matter to the grand scheme of things in the ultimate society here in the Unitarian countries. But yeah, zooming out, we can see just how exactly huge these Unitarian countries have become, especially the African one. Canada, of course, is the largest, but these guys have become large, and even Iberia has expanded recently. Indonesia, apart from uniting all the islands, hasn't done much, and neither has Japan. But still, these countries are getting pretty large and pretty powerful. Also, I want to point out real quick over here, you guys might have noticed on the religion map before, like there was these like weird pixels here. Well, it definitely wasn't intentional before. I think I've left it there over time because I like to think that, you know, Tanzania has a little exclave over here on the coast. So I just thought that was kind of cool, so I left it there. Anyway, now zooming on over here to Manchuria. This is a region that hasn't had a lot of things happen until now. Before we get into what's happening today, we need to talk about what has happened over the past few years. And I also want to say real quick that just because I don't talk about something happening here doesn't mean it can't happen. I see a lot of people complain sometimes about like things being unrealistic, and I've said before, and I'll say it again here, that just because I don't talk about something happening doesn't mean that it can't happen. Like, I'm not going to go over every single country in every single episode and talk about like their relations with other countries and what has happened internally. There's just not enough time for that. So like, you know, the Civil War and the Orange Team, just because I didn't say they were unstable, it doesn't mean that it's just out of nowhere impossible for them to be unstable. Once again, I don't have time to talk about every single country. Anyway, now over here, the pink team was a very close friend to China, but after the whole War of the Elites thing and, you know, them being dragged into it kind of, and seeing how China just fell apart, the Manchurians were starting to distance themselves from China. And they have continued to distance themselves from China, whereas now they don't even consider China an ally anymore. They're not hostile or anything like that. If anything, they're neutral, but the connection that they once had is no longer there. And like I said, they're no longer allies. They wouldn't help each other out in any specific scenario like maybe what's about to happen. And what's about to happen is the Manchurian invasion of communist Manchuria / Sakhalin / Russia. I guess this is mostly Russian, so technically it would be communist Russia. But this is another region that I've talked about before where the AN has stepped in and stopped any war from occurring, and just like over in Central Asia, they couldn't prevent it from happening this time. The Manchurians will begin to send their military into this country in various spots, but what the Manchurians don't know is that this country is secretly being aided by Japanese Unitaria. This is a bit surprising. Usually we don't see the Unitarians get involved in any kind of conflict, and while this isn't direct involvement, it is indirect involvement. Japan is sending over resources and also helping them draw battle plans to counter the Manchurians, which could lead to some questioning about what the goals of the Unitarian countries are, and more specifically Japan Unitaria. But with the help from Japan, this communist country is able to push back the Manchurians in a few strategic spots where they definitely don't want to lose land. There are apparently a lot of major cities in this country, and of course they want to protect all of them as much as they can. They just liberated a few, so now they want to keep going. Even though they still are at a disadvantage with Japan's help, we do see Manchuria take a bunch of land, but these guys are fighting back to the best of their ability, even in some cases crossing the Manchurian border and starting to take land from them. Usually you don't want to do that until you have all of your land taken back, but for these guys, their priorities are cutting off the north from the south. Apparently there's a lot of people that live up here, and if they disconnect them from the main government in the south, they'll have a pretty good chance at somehow winning this war. With that being said, the Manchurians will also go ahead and send their military in from the northernmost areas, kind of surprising the purple team in a way, as these guys didn't really think that there would be much of an offensive in the north. However, that's not the case, as the communists did send a good portion of their military up here to carry out this offensive and thus distract these guys. With that distraction in place, they were able to take back a pretty good amount of land over here in the northern areas, but they do still struggle in the south as they lose two major cities over to the purple team. However, that's not the end of countries getting involved in this conflict, because yet another country will be getting directly involved in this war. They will be declaring war on one of these countries, and they will be sending their military straight in. This is a country that has been very quiet in the past couple of decades, maybe even centuries. It's a country that has been kind of forgotten, do I say, over the past few decades and centuries. But it's a country that is extremely old and has extremely old culture and history. And it's a country that wants to kind of make themselves relevant once again on the international stage. That country is none other than Korea. Korea is a democratic country. They have been very quiet since their last war where they lost a ton of land over to Manchuria, and I do believe that was their civil war. But now, seeing how their two breakaway areas have begun to fight each other, it's the perfect opportunity for them to reclaim their lost land and demonstrate to the world that they are still a capable country despite their size. Korea will begin to send their military straight up into the most populated areas of Manchuria, sweeping through these cities and taking back what was once theirs. This was a completely surprising event for the purple team, and now they're in a little bit of a pickle. We have one invading force up here, a very stubborn defensive line over here, and now a very strong invasion force down here. Korea is actually the strongest military in this war, believe it or not. Once again, despite their size, they are still a very strong country. With Korea's entrance into the war, this will free up a lot of land for the communist country to take back. More importantly though, they take back this major city down here and push the Manchurians almost completely out of their area over here in the southern region. Up north, we do see the Manchurians continue their advance, now taking over two additional major cities, which is going to harm the communist country a little bit, but this area is not nearly as important as the southern area where the gold team is now focusing on. Additionally, this random offensive up here is still doing good numbers as they take yet another major city and begin to approach another major city, and down south, Korea's army takes yet another major city. Take a shot every time I say major city. Don't do that, you guys are too young, and also you would probably die. But just in case, major city, 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 major city. Did I mention major city? Korea will take yet another major city, and they'll take yet another major city, and also another major city. Korea is very capable, and Manchuria is very incapable. The gold team in Korea, while not directly working together, will go ahead and encircle this large army group over here. The gold team will begin to close in, but miraculously, they are able to escape and meet back up with their country. They just push out with all their forces. It was very deadly, and they lost a lot of manpower. But they were able to reconnect up with the main Manchurian group, which is going to be very helpful, as those very soldiers will help take back this major city over here, and also start to take back this major city down here. I'll stop now, I'm sorry. Up north, the Manchurians are also having success in pushing back this random offensive up here. It was going very well at first, and that was mostly because Manchuria wasn't allocating any resources to this region. Now however, they are, and they've taken back one of these important cities. With their success over in that region, though, we also see success for the communist country as they're able to take back a majority of the land and major cities in this region, and also start an all-out offensive from the north, now impeding down towards these other important cities down here. Their success in the north is kind of strange, and they've been able to kick back the Manchurians completely, which might be surprising, but that's mostly because Manchuria is pulling all their forces down towards the capital, and that's because the Koreans are right at the capital. Additionally, Korea is now sending a lot of their military forces up north to deal with the other vacant areas and cities. They'll take all those areas and even disconnect the capital area from the rest of the country, which was actually the communist country's goals in this war. Now, however, we see that Korea's in the war, and now they don't have to worry about that because they've done it for them. This leaves opportunity for the gold team to go ahead and just start doing it themselves. They'll focus on the north while the Koreans focus on the south, and this goes very well for the gold team, who is now at a very clear advantage in this entire region due to the fact that the capital city is holding a majority of the purple team's army at this time. Now, that's not to say that there's like no military forces up here, don't get the wrong idea, more so of the gold team has an advantage over the forces that are here, and thus we see constant acceleration on their front line. The purple team is still able to push back in some instances, but for the most part, these guys have the advantage. Back down south, things are not going so great. Korea has just taken out the capital city of the Manchurian country, and at this point, the purple team isn't feeling so good, so they'll go ahead and they will surrender over to Korea, as well as surrender over to the very country they attacked, hoping to gain land. Also, I don't think I talked about the justification for this war. Basically, these two countries are very politically at each other. They don't like each other at all, and it just boiled over. You know, sometimes tensions just boil over and you end up in a war. Mostly, though, Manchuria wanted more access to the Sea of Japan. They have access to the Yellow Sea, and they have very brief access over here to the Sea of Japan. However, this coastal area is not very usable in the sense that they can easily export economic values out of here. So they decided that, hey, we politically don't like these guys. They're communists for the most part, so that sucks. You know, they're scum and all. But we really want better access to the Sea of Japan. This land, like I said, isn't super usable, so we'd like a lot more land up here in the more usable areas. So that didn't work out for them, and they ended up losing. But now we can go ahead and take a look at the peace treaty between these three countries, which has the new borders of this region looking something like this. So notably, we see that the communist country gets a lot of land here, a lot more than Korea. We'll go over that in a second. But they get a combination of regions over here, as well as a small portion of land up here. As for Korea, they're going to be getting all this land down here. Now you might be wondering, why don't they get as much land as the gold team? They did way more work than these guys. Well, that's because this land down here is like 10 times more valuable than all the land that the gold team just annexed. So like they technically did get the better end of the deal compared to these guys, and they did do more work, and they definitely saved these guys, so it's only fair for them to get the more valuable land. But yeah, Korea goes ahead and now extends their coastline all the way over here to connect up with China. That is an ancient rivalry that is still present in economic senses. Politically, it's very neutral, but economically, they are rivals in this region. So they now share a border, which could fuel that rivalry even more. But now zooming out from Manchuria and taking a look at our next region, which is all the way over here in North America, we have a very interesting unification, but more so of a joining, and that is Texas going ahead and uniting with Pacifica. Now, Texas did just get independence not too long ago at all. However, in that time frame, they haven't really found themselves as a country. Texas was a very old country, and they have been massively integrated into American society, and therefore the culture is still there in some very like remotely practiced areas, but for the most part, they're just American. And you might be wondering at the same time, you know, all of these regions over here, they're all the same ethnicity, same religion, all that stuff, but still, countries do develop their own individual culture as time goes on. It's just that Texan culture isn't really found in these northern regions. It's mostly found in the gold team down here, which is kind of like the true successor of Texas at this point. But politically, and due to multiple wars, Texas shared very, very close relations with Pacifica, and Pacifica at this point is now presenting itself as this very large like option for countries in North America to join with, because it's not like Unitarianism unity where you have to suppress all these things. You're still allowed to flourish with them here, and still it's very present in society, which does present some roadblocks, but some countries do prefer that over what the Unitarians have to offer, and Texas was one of those. You know, their economy wasn't great. They're a landlocked country. The land that they own is not very valuable unless you're like farming, so like it's gonna benefit both Pacifica and themselves. Their economy will be integrated with a lot of the coastal cities over here, the urban areas where the money is made, and in return we have the Pacificans getting a very, very good spot to farm. You have to think about how much more food is going to be available now for a way cheaper price for all of the people in Pacifica, because honestly there's not a lot of areas to farm within this country. This is the best spot. So now Pacifica no longer has to import as much food as they did before. They can grow their own. That's a big win for them, but also a big win for the people of Texas, who are going to experience a massive boost in quality of life. Anyway, now we're going to take a quick step back, because this next event is world changing. We are completely shifting gears here because a very, very, very important event has just occurred, one that defies international law, and one that is going to bring about a fierce debate amongst the AN countries about whether or not this should be allowed or not. Now, what event am I talking about? What could be happening that is going to change the world completely? It's going to flip everyone over on their head and be like, wait, hold on, we weren't expecting this. We got to figure out how we're going to deal with this, because this could very, very easily lead into World War VI. Yeah, just out of nowhere, the possibility of World War VI is all of a sudden here. It's present, it's put down the priorities of everybody. Everyone is now focused on this new event that has occurred. And what could cause World War VI? What could be so dramatic? What could be so insane that all of a sudden countries are going to start turning on each other in the face of annihilation by a possible alien species coming back to Earth? Well, if you've been paying attention in recent episodes, you'll probably notice that Mesopotamia recently has become very united, and more countries have decided to join one another, mostly joining the red team, and in this episode, joining the blue team. Now, however, the final unification is in place, as the red team and the blue team will not be uniting together, but instead will be forming a brand new country together, known simply as Mesopotamian Unitaria. The instant reaction of the world is not to declare war on Mesopotamia, but to instead call a special meeting in the Assembly of Nations. Remember, the world has progressed tremendously now to where war isn't like the first action that a lot of countries take. Previously, this country would have been jumped instantly, but that's not really how they do things nowadays. There's usually a little bit of diplomacy before actions are taken. But the Assembly will convene on the unification of Mesopotamia, and if this truly defies the peace treaty of World War IV and the founding treaty of the Assembly of Nations, the Mesopotamian Accord, which, if you don't remember, states that the red team and the blue team are forbidden from uniting together. The Mesopotamians believe that they have found a loophole in the Mesopotamian Accord, but a lot of countries aren't necessarily buying it. India, for example, is extremely opposed to the unification. They are ready to take action. However, they will first convene with the assembly diplomatically. And in the assembly meeting, a ton of different opinions are given from countries all across the world. A lot of leaders quickly take to the public to state what their opinion is on this new unification.
The AN forbids everlasting peace and prosperity in our region. We must advance past these old restrictions for our future.
It is simple. The peace of World War IV forbids unification in that region. We will not allow it.
This isn't a matter of grand politics. It's a matter of what's best for our people. We will do what we must to ensure prosperity.
The Third World War has taught us a valuable lesson. Unification in Mesopotamia leads to dangerous levels of imperialism.
Our ideology is one of peace. We do not seek war. We are democratic. We are for the people, and we welcome Mesopotamia.
It is a violation of international law and the very foundation of our system. We will prevent this through all means.
Mesopotamia has and always will be our greatest ally. We stand with them in all causes, even now through these troubling times.
While we believe there is a peaceful resolution to the current situation at hand, one in which all parties are satisfied, we acknowledge the need and standard to follow international law.
We are familiar with imperialism within our home nation. We know how it starts, but we do not see evidence of such in Mesopotamia. Thus, we will remain neutral in this matter.
We understand the complications involved in this matter and understand both sides, but we must comply with the Assembly.
The reactions across the globe are all different. Some countries declare their neutrality, like Brazil. Some countries, like Greece, are stating that military action needs to be taken immediately. This defies the international treaty that this very assembly was created on. Other countries, like the Farmers' Republic, who have fought long and hard for Mesopotamia, fought alongside with Mesopotamia for years, are stating that they are with them in this cause. They believe that that treaty that prevented unification is far, far outdated. It doesn't even apply to the modern day because Mesopotamia isn't imperial anymore. It's simply democratic. It's one of the most democratic regions in the world. Why are they not allowed to unite? It would simply only benefit the people here. They aren't imperialist. There's no need to expand for these countries. They just want to be under one country because it works so fluently. It works so well. It is a very strong economy, and not that it only just benefits their people, but having a strong economy like Mesopotamia also benefits the entire world. India and other countries are worried more so about great power competition. They believe that Mesopotamia is going to go ahead and prevent them from doing anything. Well, guess what? India hasn't done anything either. And that is what the Mesopotamian countries are preaching right now. We are not a threat to anybody. Those past ways are no longer our current values. Before this unification, the border between the red team and the blue team didn't even exist. You don't need a passport to go back and forth between the countries. You can simply just go in and come back anytime you want. You can get a job in the other country and still live in another country, and there's no problems. You can just do that. They were only ever divided by the sovereign borders on this map. In all other ways, they were already one country. So they could have just stayed as separate countries, but this union is the ultimate next step for Mesopotamian society. They are Unitarian, remember that. They aren't just a union now. This isn't like the old empire or anything. That is long gone. This is something new. This is Mesopotamian Unitaria. And the loophole that they believe they found is that the fact that they are Unitarian, they are presenting themselves as not a union between two countries, but the founding of something brand new. And therefore they believe that in the court, they will win this case and they will avoid a worldwide coalition against them, that all nations in the world are required to participate in if they join the Assembly of Nations. That is what the Mesopotamia Accord promises. Has it been broken? That's up for your individual interpretation. It's also up for the interpretation of each country in the world. We already saw the opinions of some countries, but now action will begin to be taken. Countries like Greece and India will already declare the coalition against Mesopotamia. They will begin to build up their armies and begin to stage them on their borders, waiting for countries that separate these two to allow their military to move in and go through the territory to properly invade Mesopotamia. That's correct. Greece and India are technically at war with Mesopotamia already. The two biggest Mesopotamia haters teaming up here for what they believe is the right thing to do, and arguably it could be the right thing to do. This defies international law according to the Mesopotamia Accord, but then again, the wording doesn't necessarily say that they can't form a new country, they just can't unite together. They formed this new Unitarian country, it's under a completely different ideology, so it's just really up to interpretation of each country of whether or not this does violate the assembly law. But Mesopotamia will not be alone. They of course have their own military alliance consisting of Caucasia and the two Anatolian countries, and in this very matter, these three countries are united and in solidarity with Mesopotamia. They will fight alongside the new Unitarians. This also means that Greece will be attacking these countries and India will as well. But Mesopotamia also has economic allies of their own, and in this case, every single economic ally of Mesopotamia will vote against forming the coalition. They will not participate in the coalition. And this is up to you once again, but by doing so, they are technically voiding international law. They're breaking law, and this is something that could be taken out on them. But Persia will not be participating. The green team won't, the gray team won't, none of the African countries. They are standing with Mesopotamia and saying that they should be allowed to unite under the new Unitarian government. But we're missing one very important thing, and that is the entrance of Mesopotamia into the Star Military Alliance, also known as the Unitarian Military Alliance. Every Unitarian country is in agreement to allow Mesopotamia, despite the hard times, to join their military alliance. They will not join the economic alliance because they have one of their own that is extremely powerful. It would be a downgrade for them to leave it. But they join the military alliance, which means they gain an ally in Canada, an ally in Africa, an ally in Indonesia, an ally in Iberia, and an ally in Japan. Each and every single Unitarian country will defy international law here and pledge their support for Mesopotamia in this matter. The Unitarians might be very mysterious and they could have some very skeptical values. However, there is one thing that is very clear about them, and that is that they stick together no matter what. The Unitarians even say that they are willing to defy international law, if it is considered to be a defying, to help Mesopotamia out in this war. This will create a lot of backlash. Multiple countries from around the world are now going to look at the Unitarians as this negative organization. No longer are they viewing them as like neutral or maybe even positive. They're now seeing the Unitarians as these countries that are willing to defy international law and the very agreement that they agreed to when they joined the assembly in the name of expanding their ideology. And so, the international coalition against the Unitarians will be formed. And here we see the assembly coalition form. Now you might notice that only around half the world is in this coalition, meaning that the assembly is having its largest fracture since World War V. Around half the world is openly choosing to either be neutral in this coalition or to support the Unitarians, and more so Mesopotamia, in their war for what they believe in, and that is of course unification. Once again, the interpretation of whether or not this violates international law is individually up to you. So the countries that do solemnly believe that this violates international law are now participating in the coalition. They call themselves the Sovereigners, and the Unitarians, and more so the Mesopotamians, will be building a large alliance of their own. One that consists of some of the most unlikely allies in the world. The core Mesopotamian region, of course, will fight for the survival of the Unitarians in Mesopotamia. But moving north to Europe, we see some ancient allies coming to the aid of the Mesopotamians, more so in the Farmers' Republic and in Rome, who despite a very mixed history with the Mesopotamians, now find themselves in favor of them, as in recent times they have worked better together. Also, Rome was home to a very large Mesopotamian population down here in the pink team, who now possesses a majority of Mesopotamian population, will fight for the existence of the motherland back over in Mesopotamia. Norway will come to the aid of their old ally. In a very dramatic twist of events, America will come to the aid of their old ally. Some countries, like America for example, are pursuing their own interest in the matter of this coalition against the assembly, with them more so focused on reclaiming some lost land over here in the Pacific area, but also notably fighting against their former ally in Mexico, who after a few government changes is no longer considered an ally. We see the Lavender country in Africa join in on the coalition against the assembly, not necessarily in favor of Mesopotamia, but in favor of the Unitarian country they were just getting ready to join. Major powers across the map are also playing neutral. We have Australia staying neutral, Vietnam stays neutral, the Gold Team, Poland, Brazil stays neutral. But no matter how you view Mesopotamia's actions, they have united and the world has responded, and World War VI is officially upon us.
The world is ending.
And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes Augusto Mapping,
Subeki,
Vista Maps,
Omega the YouTuber,
the official
GTG
GeoMapper on YT,
Kingdom of the
Other
Acheron,
Coda,
Shifty
Andrew
Mapping,
02,
Not CBB
H3
Junior,
CJ,
Augusto,
Augusto,
Opie the Bopi,
Brad is totally my name,
Xander
Country
Pro
Wham,
2023,
Jesse Gerboa,
Green France,
Nevada Garbage
and
Trucks,
Golden Ball Mapping,
Australian Geo
Ada
Guy,
Legion,
Zaylance,
DJ Big
Laser
Goose,
Taze Mapping,
Pablo Sigma
and
Cat.
Hammer Toad 45. Once again, thank you guys.